for it starting at home, you know. I think no matter how many laws we change, I don't know, it's very important for those laws to change, they are archaic. But I think as a society, you know, we need to start becoming more comfortable and understanding. And I think that is something that we should be working on or working towards. At the time when Professor Siras was harangued for his sexual preference and when he was you know, thrown out of AMU, was a time when it was legal to be homosexual in the country, you know. But did that make any difference to what led the circumstances that led to his death? So I think as a society, we need to be comfortable, and for that, we as gay people need to be comfortable with our identity first. And I'm not sure we really are. We're all right as long as we are hiding and doing it or doing it under identities where we won't get caught out. But I don't think that we have our own identity. So that's something.
Can I put the question to each of you?
Well, I think they are not sort of mutually exclusive. I think you need both. Of course, what Apurva said, it has to be at home, those conversations have to be. But I think law is also important because when you have something like 377, not just because of course it's archaic, the people who actually enforce that law, in England it's not practiced anymore, they have abolished it years ago. But by saying that homosexuality is a criminal offense, in some sense in the social, in the social consciousness, in the collective consciousness, you are saying that it's criminal. Because we do, as regular people, all of us do think what is legal and illegal. We are so conditioned to thinking. So I think it's not an either or. I think we have to fight to abolish 377, and with this government it looks more difficult, but that's why more the reason. And of course, simultaneously, you know, more people have to talk, more kashishas have to happen, more people have to come out. And I think those who don't come out, I think we all, I'm sure all of you understand it much more, that one has to be also empathetic to that. You know, because sometimes we take our confidence, our liberal homes, all of that for granted. But the society can be really cruel. I mean, as a straight person, the kind of stories I've heard in these 20 years almost makes me guilty. I feel ashamed almost of being part of that community that judges, that, you know, sort of decides what is right and wrong and what decides what's normal and not, and all of that. So I think these issues have to become more mainstream. Kashish Festival must not only be seen by LGBT community, but by people at large, where they start feeling this is as much my problem. And I think that's a challenge always, because when things are of a smaller community, it's so difficult to find that place within a mainstream system that it's bad enough. But what happens is that you start attracting only people from the community, and then the other, then it's their thing. Us and them starts happening. So it's difficult. A lot of people ask me, why do you have to go for a 377 rally? Why do you have to? Because I get a lot of trolls every time I retweet an article, let's say, something about, you know, an LGBT issue. And I know that in 20 years, earlier when somebody would say, are you a lesbian? Why are you? And I used to almost be defensive. I'd say, no, I'm not. Why can't an actor be straight and still do a lesbian character? Today, if they ask me that question, I'm not defensive at all. I'm like, that's none of your business. I could be not, you know, that's immaterial to my role or my work. But it has taken me also, I mean, all of us have that journey. But most people are not even exposed to these conversations. Their conditioning is so deep that to come out of that, more stories have to come out. I mean, it's tragic, right? In 20 years, there was fire, and a really sensitive portrayal is Aligarh. What have we really seen in between in India? There should have been 100 stories at least out of those 1,000 stories that we make every year. In 20 years, it will be 20,000 stories. There should have been at least 20 films. So I think there's a long way to go, but we have to be at it.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with what Nandita has been saying, that it's important to legally one is empowered, because when you're legally empowered, it's so much more easier to also asserting your rights as an individual. And I feel also it's very, very important to start this dialogue at school level, when they're having sex education. Because I remember, like, when my niece was about 12, I started talking to her, confiding in her about, okay, I like this guy, and what do you think you go and tell my mother? Also trying to, because she's growing up, trying to get her to talk to me about her life. And, recently, she's 15, she comes to me with this painting, and which had this man in a cage, rainbow colors, and there was a poem written behind it saying, the gay man wants to be free, and that says, my boyfriend wrote this for you. So it was like really sweet to have that, dialogue, and to be always like, she's like, yesterday she told me, why didn't you take me for the opening? So I said, I don't know if they'll allow 15-year-olds to come. So I think, yeah, it's very important to start talking to youngsters, to young people, especially in schools, because that's also a space where the sense of, I never it's like digressing for this, but I never really had anything of a come out, because I don't remember ever being closed or ever having to deny my identity. I'm born and brought up in Bhutan, where somehow, it was never an issue. Somehow, I don't know how come, it was never an issue with my parents. I've never had a dialogue about whether the need of being married or going to a doctor, nothing. So it was kind of, even while working in the industry, I never denied my sexuality. I never went out saying Gaia, but whenever I have to talk about it, I've always spoken about it. And I don't feel actually as an artist being ever discriminated being gay. Never, in the industry. People don't want to do our kinds of films because of economic reasons, because of various other films also, independent films don't get support. But what I increasingly have started feeling is because of the law, and this is something that I faced when I made my first film in 2006, I got a U certificate from the censor board. Okay. And in 2011, when my IR was released, by then the law had changed again, And it took me like 6 months of fighting with the censor board. They wanted to cut out one section of the story. There are 4 stories, out of which the gay story was about 24 minutes. They wanted to edit out 21 minutes of the film. And that was a difficult fight because by then you're not empowered by law. So it can be used against you. And I think that is what is really important. Today, even as a filmmaker, when I'm trying to make a film which has evidence of homosexuality, you're constantly thinking what all hurdles you might have to, and you are answerable. When you're making a mainstream film, it is a lot of money, and somewhere you're answerable to people who trust in you and investing in your film. So that becomes very, very difficult as an artist. So as an artist, I think also it's important that this law goes because it is constantly influence to everything.
Can I just add something to it? I was just reminded of this Hijra Habba that I'd gone in Bangalore. And the stories I heard of how the police oppression happens, it's also a class thing. I mean, sexual orientation, class, region, there are so many things that intersect. And the horrific stories that these transgenders have to go through from various parts of the country. So I think if we continue to say, okay, even though the law exists, but there are people, after all, we do have the freedom, it's not for everybody. We are still far more privileged. I mean, we may have our own battles and all of that, but there are some people who on a daily basis are criminalized because they come from a certain class, they are harassed and they are picked up, they are abused. So I think that's also something where, if you're talking of dignity, then that dignity also comes with saying that this is not a crime.
I mean, for me, looking at the whole aspect, I think sexual misconception, of course, is one aspect of something which we need to get rid of and understand also when we're talking about the different barriers which come across, like against the government. But for me, I think the censorship really starts from the family, which for me is a big issue. We talk about the colonial law, we talk about how it has influenced us and how it's put this, but I really think, where did this come from? Why our parents are thinking? Why our mothers and fathers are saying that don't dress like this, dress like this. That you should not be with a man, you should be not be, but you know what I'm saying is? So I just feel that censorship has somehow penetrated so much into a family structure, and that's why the child is growing up.